This millionaire surcharge for property tax relief would raise $4.5 billion.
Absolutely not. I mean, Democrat policies are already driving taxpayers and the large taxpayers out of this state, and that'll just make it worse.
It's Senate candidate Don Tracy following former Illinois Governor Pat Quinn on the question of should Illinois charge a 3% surcharge to millionaires in order to find some property tax relief, as the state of Illinois has the highest property taxes in the country. It's Illinois in Focus Daily with the Center Square. Go and check out the headline, Ex-Illinois Governor Pushes for Millionaires Surcharge Amendment. It's the Illinois Constitution. The governor was in Springfield yesterday after being in Chicago the day before pushing this idea. So where are we at here? Again, if you recall, the 2024 ballot had a non-binding question about whether or not there should be a 3% surcharge on millionaires, and that should go to property tax relief. Well, that did pass a non-binding resolution across the state, got 60+%, I believe, on the November 2024 election. And that's giving some ammunition to Governor Pat Quinn, former governor. He was governor after Rod Blagojevich was impeached and ultimately sentenced and went into prison. He was the lieutenant governor. And then Quinn, after Blagojevich went away, became governor and ran again and lost to Governor Bruce Rauner. So Quinn was governor for 2009 to 2015, and he's back at it with pushing for ballot initiatives. He says he's got the history of grassroots efforts to change the Illinois Constitution. He highlighted the creation of the Citizens Utility Board through a grassroots efforts. He talked about the cutback amendment that he got into the Illinois Constitution back in 1980, shrinking the size of the General Assembly and a variety of other things. But he talked about the millionaire surcharge and how he says it's an important proposition that Illinois needs because he acknowledged Illinois has the highest property taxes in the country.
That's a rather select group of people in Illinois. They're blessed. They are lucky enough to have that $1 million a year income.
Now, I think others may not use the word lucky enough. Some may say a millionaire is somebody who makes more than $1 million. Could be a small business busting their hump, working 80+ hours a week. Others may say that the only person seemingly lucky enough to get $1 million is Governor J.B. Pritzker, who won $1.4 million playing poker over in Las Vegas recently. But regardless, Governor Pat Quinn talking about why he thinks that millionaires should pay an extra 3% surcharge on their $1 million to help fund property tax relief.
But having a surcharge of 3% only on millionaires is the best way to raise significant money to reduce property taxes on families and businesses in Illinois. According to the Illinois Department of Revenue, this millionaire surcharge for property tax relief would raise $4.5 billion. That's a lot of money, and it's needed to be the biggest property tax relief measure in state history.
So what is this going to look like if it gets on the ballot? Well, first, just to understand how a proposed constitutional amendment gets on the ballot, you can either have a citizen-led initiative, which there are very high obstacles to obtain that, plus possible court challenges that have blocked other citizen-driven initiatives to change the Constitution. One in particular, if you recall, was the issue about having a independent commission oversee drawing political maps in Illinois instead of having the legislature do that. But another avenue is to essentially have the legislature approve out of both chambers with supermajorities, putting on the ballot a question to change the Constitution. I don't think the governor has to sign that. I think the legislature just passes it, but they have to do it by May May 3rd next year in order to have enough time between May 3rd and the November election to get everything in line to get that on the ballot. Plus, you've got other considerations. There's only a certain amount of voter-led initiatives that can be on the ballot for statewide. I believe it's only 3. So interesting to see that this is the one that Governor Pat Quinn is pushing for, to have a surcharge to charge millionaires 3% extra on top of the flat income tax that Illinois has. And he says that's going to help with property tax relief, putting it into a property tax relief fund and giving rebates directly to people who have homestead exemptions, for instance. He also talked about how that money could be used to give to certain jurisdictions that could roll back their property tax. But I asked how throwing more money at the state's high property taxes, highest in the nation property taxes, actually addresses what's driving Illinois' high property taxes.
Just increasing the amount of revenue coming in, that's not going to necessarily, or even giving rebates, that's not going to address what's driving property taxes going up.
Well, I agree. You have to look at the levies of all the units of government that levy property tax bills every year. I agree with that kind of watching and oversight. I think if you really look at it, 2/3 of the property tax bill for most people goes to the school district. I think that needs to be looked at. And what I did when I was governor in 2014 is I put an advisory referendum on the ballot. I signed it into law and campaigned for it. They called for a 3% surcharge on giving on millionaires in order to give money to school districts in order to reduce their property tax levy. And that could be as well a proposed constitutional amendment you could put together with the rebates for property taxpayers who have the homestead exemption. And you could also say to school districts, the state of Illinois has, under our Constitution, the duty to be the primary responsibility for funding education. Our state really hasn't lived up to that constitutional admonition. And so by what happened in 2010 or 2014 for the referendum we had on the ballot, a millionaire amendment then, that money could be used to help school districts get money from the state as long as they reduce their property tax levy. And I think that's what you're getting at.
Now, I've been covering different levels of government for 15 plus years and used to cover Springfield city government, right? The capital city, the municipal government. And every year they'd have budget conversations and debates about, how are we going to address the property tax levy? And in the municipality in particular, I recall the budget director for several years in a row, and I'm sure it's probably still the case, all of the city of Springfield's share of property taxes were going to pay pensions for public sector employees that worked for the city that no longer work for the city. So all the share of the property taxes for the city of Springfield was going to just pay for people who aren't working anymore. That's a big driver for at least the municipal pensions, the municipal property tax. But you look at your property tax bill and it breaks down. You got 8, 7, maybe 10 units of government that you're paying, and the majority of that's going to your school district. So what's being done? What can be done to address property tax increases, with the state of Illinois being at the top of the list for highest property taxes in the nation? We used to be behind New Jersey, but when you look at over the weekend, people burning their Cook County property tax bills because you're seeing 90+% increases in how much it's costing people now. They can't afford it anymore. So they're revolting and burning their property tax bills. This idea of the 3% surcharge, how is that going to impact Illinois' already diminished competitiveness with other states? That's another question I had for former Illinois Governor Pat Quinn.
An economic disadvantage to neighboring states and states like Texas and Florida. Florida's governor's eyeing getting rid of the property tax altogether. Missouri, I believe, is eyeing getting rid of the income tax. How does this not negatively impact the state's competitiveness?
Well, let's have a referendum on it. We had one last year that was advisory. I think that we can, in a referendum campaign, spell out how you can have a fairer system, a system that's not unfair towards ordinary people living from check to check every month. And I think we can win that. I think we showed last year that there's great support for that idea. If you take a look around the country with respect to the tax system, some states are much better than others when it comes to fairness. Illinois is one of the 10 most unfair tax codes in the whole country. Study after study, year after year. The reason why you're unfair is we rely way too much on property taxes to fund government, especially education. So we want to change that. If you want to change things in a democracy, you got to roll up your sleeves and get out there and advocate. And I did that in 2014, 2024. I'm going to do it in the coming year, too.
Now, Quinn obviously making that pitch. You're probably going to hear a lot more about this in 2024 when it was just an advisory referendum. So it wasn't something that was binding. There was no real opposition against it, just because it was just a question. It wasn't going to force anything. So those who would oppose such a constitutional amendment didn't put up the money to oppose it. So it'd be interesting to see just how this comes together with the November 2026 election coming up rapidly. All right, we got less than a year now. But I ran into Republican Illinois U.S. Senate candidate Don Tracy at the State House yesterday. And I asked him about this. Should Illinoisans have a 3% surcharge on millionaires for property tax relief?
An economic disadvantage.
Here's the Senate candidate, Don Tracy.
Absolutely not. I mean, Democrat policies are already driving taxpayers and the large taxpayers out of this state, and that'll just make it worse. Where has that ever worked? It just hasn't. I mean, that's what the Democrats always do. They can't control spending, so they have to ever increase taxes, and then they always want to tax the rich. But where has that ever worked?
What should be done to alleviate Illinois' highest property taxes?
We need to elect more Republicans. I mean, we're standing here at the state capitol in Sangamon County. Sangamon County is run by a Republican county board. And they have kept a lid pretty much on property taxes, way more so than the state as a whole and other localities. With good, competent management of the government, you can hold the line on property taxes. And especially if you're not doing giveaway programs. That's really sounds overly simplistic, but the solution is to elect Republicans and competent managers of government.
We'll hear a lot more from Don Tracy. Chatted with him on a couple of different issues. I'll share more of that tomorrow here with Illinois in Focus Daily as we come to you each and every weekday morning with the latest of what's going on in the land of Lincoln. And we'll also keep you posted on the ongoing debate around whether or not Illinois should have a surcharge on millionaires. 3%. Pay it up, and that's going to be redistributed to others if this particular amendment passes. All right, go to thecentersquare.com, get the headlines, subscribe. Wake up with us here for Illinois in Focus Daily.